Welcome, everybody, to Obsessed with Wrestling podcast. I'm your host, Tim Hart. I'm being joined today by Joe Caruana and Miguel Lopez. How's it going, guys?
Oh, real good.
Great. Glad to be here. Thanks.
Make sure you join us on Twitter, OWW Podcast, as well as our YouTube page, which has all of our podcasts on there for your viewing. And we're also on Player.fm. Search Obsessed with Wrestling on all those platforms, and you shall find us as well as on Facebook. This week, we obviously lost a underrated big name in professional wrestling, in my opinion, and obviously, I'm talking about Chyna. And before I give my thoughts, I'm going to give it to you guys. Joe, what were your impressions of Chyna's entire body of work in professional wrestling?
Well, I was always a fan. I thought she was cool from the very beginning. I liked that she was the kind of tall, quiet, stoic manager to DX that always kind of just stood there with her arms crossed and looked intimidating, and very rarely got physical. When she did, it was a nice stiff forearm or threw somebody around before she started the matches. Intergender matches in the company, but yeah, no, Chyna was always a cool character.
And Miguel, what are some memorable moments that you can recall of Chyna's career?
Well, I mean, she was just a pioneer for her time, and she opened so many doors for the current female workers nowadays. But I guess one of the bigger memories was when she became like the first woman to enter the Royal Rumble. This was all during the Attitude Era, and also I think she even went over on Chris Jericho one time to become the first woman to be an Intercontinental Champion. So those were some pretty big achievements, and it was unexpected, but they went that way, and it's definitely history.
Yeah, you mentioned her becoming the first woman to be in the Royal Rumble. That's actually one of my favorite pops in Monday Night Raw history, and that was, I want to say it was mid-January. It was like maybe the week after Mankind won the title. It was the live Raw, and they had a corporate Rumble, and it was basically DX versus the corporation, and whoever won would be number 30 in the Rumble.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really a testament to the great storytelling of the WWE back then, because you had all the members of DX come out, all the members of the corporation come out, and you had Boss Man and Triple H left as the last two.
Mm-hmm.
And then you hear the buzzer, and here comes Mr. McMahon as a member of the corporation. And he comes down, he dumps Boss Man and Triple H over at the same time, and he's ripping off his shirt, and he's celebrating. And then you hear the buzzer again, and you hear the DX music, and here comes Chyna down to the ring, and the crowd lost their shit. And it was the first time that she really entered a match as a woman entering a men's match, and she ended up winning thanks to a huge appearance by Stone Cold Steve Austin. But from that point on, like you said, then she entered the Royal Rumble, and then she began a in-ring career where, for the most part, she wrestled men for like that first year in '99, and culminating with her defeating Jeff Jarrett for the Intercontinental title in what was that match? A kitchen sink match or Good Housekeeping match, wasn't it? I believe it was what it was called. And yeah, those were some of the memories I have of her. But really, when you look back on it, at that time, Sable's wrestling for the women's title with Jacqueline and some other people, and Chyna is wrestling the men, and I don't even think it really dawns on people what, especially back then, what that was. You had a woman in the ring in tag matches and single matches, holding her own with men, Joe.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, she was awesome. Aside from, well, compared to her to like the current women wrestlers they have, the size alone makes it more believable. But I mean, they were able to get away with that stuff back then because they also had Jazz come along from ECW, who was another one that was, famous for wrestling guys. And no, it was definitely different. And another thing I liked about her, if you guys remember the first time she spoke on Raw, that was kind of a big deal. She went how many years without talking?
That's true. I remember because when she first talked, and everybody looked at her like, "What?" and she was like, "Yeah, I could talk." Miguel, do you think that Triple H would have survived as a character without the inclusion of China in February of 1997? Because at that point, he had been feuding with Goldust over the IC strap, and at Royal Rumble, he inexplicably, for I think about one or two shows, had Mr. Hughes as his second before China came around. But do you think that adding China to Triple H gave him the uniqueness that separated him from other wrestlers of the time?
Absolutely. I think it all started out with her debut. If we all remember, she came from the crowd and applied like a sleeper or rear naked choke to Marlena, which was Goldust's manager at the time, and that was a big shock and surprise because they didn't the fans weren't really expecting anything like that, and it definitely added to the feud. And if say Hunter Hearst Helmsley never had China in his corner, I don't think he would have progressed like he has. And we all know he's pretty high up now, but he did start from humble beginnings.
Well, and Joe, and even the dynamic later on in '97 when DX was formed, you had Shawn Michaels, this legendary champion, multiple-time world champion. You had Triple H. You had China, this woman who, I mean, let's face it, especially back in '97, she looked like a man, like legit looked like a man. And you had Rick Rude, really a hodgepodge of a faction, but it really worked.
Oh yeah, DX or that version of DX, maybe with Rick Rude thrown in there was kind of like it was what it was, but just Triple H, Michaels, and China together, that version of DX was awesome, especially because all the them two guys were doing all the mic work and doing goofy stuff, and the time when they did the double moon to the camera and China's just sitting there looking all pissed off, and then they cut to her, did her thing, like just stuff like that. I thought she played a perfect role with them because these guys were just, especially Michaels. Michaels was just awesome on the mic back then. Triple H was becoming, into his own shoes, and I just love that group. Even when they got the other guys and they were huge and everything, it was awesome. But that original three of them as a faction in '97 was just killer.
Yeah, and in that late '97, early '98, they had a lot of really good promos that were that China really lent herself to the comedic relief, whether it was that famous match where Shawn Michaels and Triple H and China were sitting up on the ramp holding up various signs, and including the famous "I'd rather be in China" sign, or when China got implants, breast implants, and they referred to themselves as double D-Generation X. Those kinds of memories, I think, separated D-Generation X and made them must-see. If you remember also playing strip poker in like a 30-minute segment on Raw at the time was like, just what the heck is going on? But, it was... Her beginnings in the WWE were obviously strange, but unfortunately her ending in the WWE was almost equally as strange. And obviously with relationships, they are what they are, and it's a difficult topic, but I'm sure that China, Triple H, Shane McMahon, or Stephanie McMahon all have to share some of the blame for how that ended, Miguel.
Definitely.
I mean, when I look at it, I understand Triple H maybe not wanting to be with China anymore, but um, obviously, I don't think that workplace environment was probably very hospitable to continued employment, and I'm sure that China may not have handled herself uh, the best either, especially considering how much we've heard over the years of her anger and distaste for Triple H and Stephanie McMahon. But it was disappointing because I believe that was shortly after she had a high-profile match at WrestleMania 17. If I remember correctly. I don't remember her opponent, but I remember her being in a one-on-one match, which at the time for a women's match to be one-on-one at WrestleMania was a pretty huge deal. But her cause of death obviously is at this point we have to wait a few weeks for the coroner to do the toxicology. But did you hear at all about the scene and how they don't believe that it was suicide, Joe?
No, you know what? I didn't come across that. The only thing I was reading online last night, and I believe that her brain is going to be donated to science, and it's going to be tested on by the doctor that Will Smith portrayed in that concussion movie. I'm not familiar with or anything, but that's the latest that I heard about her autopsy. And
Yeah, I did hear that her brain is going to be donated to the concussion. I think at Boston College or Boston University or something. There's a concussion department that is the one that all these athletes, including Kevin Nash and I believe Mick Foley, have donated their brains after they die. Um, Apparently, the reports are that her body was found possibly one or as many as 2 days after she had passed, and there were pill bottles in her vicinity, but the pill bottles were not empty, so they do not believe that she intentionally tried to shorten her life. But it may have been some kind of unfortunate cocktail with maybe a mixture of alcohol or something involved. But it's unfortunate that we never got the resurrection of China like we did Jake and like we did Scott Hall, and that. But I mean, Miguel, now that the China book had its final chapter, do you expect her to be in the WWE Hall of Fame now that the WWE doesn't have to worry about her going off on them?
I think that it's likely that she'll receive a posthumous induction in the Hall of Fame, and for the same reasons discussed earlier, she was a lot of firsts for women in sports entertainment and wrestling, and it's definitely there. And with her passing, it's unfortunate, but she's been out of the picture for a very long time because of such sour grapes from her former company.
And Joe, she's slam dunk Hall of Famer to you?
you know what? I would say, and of course this would have been much better had she not passed away. But yeah, I think she was a Hall of Famer years ago, definitely. But I also think that she would have been, and still may be, a two-time Hall of Famer, because I definitely think that DX will go in as a group like the Four Horsemen did, or the Von Erichs, and I think that would be awesome for her memory to be a two-time Hall of Famer, even if it is posthumously.
Two-time.
Yeah. Well, that was the biggest headline of the week. Let's put it that way, and that came down midweek. But we had Raw earlier in the week. Raw, I thought, again, every episode of Raw makes you just look back in WrestleMania and just ask yourself why. Because obviously, again, Shane McMahon's in control, and this time they give even a less of a reason. They just say, due to overwhelming support, again. They don't even mention Twitter or social media now. Miguel, what do you think about this, with this continued rolling story of Shane McMahon? And I don't know if you've heard the reports, but apparently Stephanie, Triple H, and Vince have all been taken off of advertising of Raw all the way through Extreme Rules. What do you think about how they're continuing the Shane McMahon thing?
Well, I think that just goes to show that right before WrestleMania, they were just trying to put something together last minute, and none of the stipulations really stuck the night after WrestleMania, obviously. But so far, the fans have gotten a lot of surprise, pleasant surprises, and it seems like the internet community is like a little more pleased with how things have been as of late. But it's just it just goes to show that the writers can go in one direction and then just do a complete 180 and just like negate anything that they were trying to accomplish beforehand. So I don't know. It's 50-50 booking for me, if you ask me.
Well, it feels to me like going into WrestleMania when Vince decided to bring Shane back that it was done for a purpose.
Hmm.
Because if you remember correctly, a few months ago, it might have been even at the back end of last year, Wrestling Observer Dave Meltzer reported that the WWE had sent out a fan survey to certain fans. I don't know who got them or how they got them or whatever, but it was basically a marketing research company that was asking people reasons why they watch Raw, reasons why they don't watch Raw.
Hmm.
And so there's part of me that feels like Raw now is different than it was before WrestleMania. I don't know if statistically, if somebody counted up the minutes, if there's a difference, but I feel like we have less promos, less storylines, less long storylines, let's put it that way, and a lot more matches. And so I feel like maybe they were intending to go this route the whole way, but just possibly just didn't want anybody to be able to fantasy book it correctly because obviously, as we know, everybody and their brother was fantasy booking WrestleMania and the Hell in a Cell match, 6 ways from Sunday.
Hmm.
But I definitely think that Raw has had a different vibe having a babyface authority figure. Joe, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, no, that's definitely noticeable having the beginning of the show be the babyface authority, but eventually that's going to get old too, though, just in the same way that the heel authority went on forever and ever. So I don't know. The only thing I would say, like, since they are switching it up and they're putting the main events have been pretty different lately too, putting guys they tag matches with Cesaro and Kevin Owens in there. It's awesome to see. And then of course the 4-way match they had to determine the number one contender for Payback, like stuff like that's cool, but I'd say like really shake it up and don't get too comfortable with Shane coming out in the beginning of every show, like almost being like a general manager. Give him like have him. Well, I guess there were some parts where he was talking with people backstage as well, but maybe start a show off with a match and then roll into a few matches before you, and then maybe cut to Shane in the back, like writing something down, and people trying to guys that really are looking to shine go up to him for a little bit of a rub, like people struggling in the undercard, and it's definitely good seeing something different. But he's also going to need some true opposition, and like they're kind of doing with Kevin Owens, always getting in his face.
I love the babyface authority with Shane, but I do agree that something just doesn't feel right, and I think it's because everything that he does almost is a plot hole into itself, because all the fans watching are like, okay, that's great that he's making this match, but it's like, is this really going to be how it's going to be, or is just Triple H's music going to hit, or the Authority or McMahon, because he's not quote unquote permanently in charge. I think looking back on WrestleMania now, if they wanted to get around having The Undertaker win, but still put Shane in charge, I think a easy loophole would be that whatever was in the lockbox, okay, Vince, you get the papers back, and so Shane's not in line of succession. But just because you got back what's in the lockbox doesn't mean that Shane McMahon can't make public whatever you did that was huge mistake and embarrass you. And then that could have been the impetus behind allowing Vince to be like, fine, you could run Raw, but it's only until I say so or something. Does that make any sense, Miguel?
Yeah, absolutely. It seems like they kind of had it cut and dry, and they're just apparently, it seems to me like just trying to go on to see autopilot and see how things go along with that. But I'm not sure. I'm curious to see how these upcoming weeks come up, and how things go with Kane as the authority figure, and if anything, what kind of opposition's gonna pop up throughout that time until Vince or Triple H or Stephanie come back.
And when I was watching Raw, it kind of made me think about what Raw was like when we were growing up in the mid to late 90s, prior to the Attitude Era. But a lot of times, the main event that you got that night on Raw, or a big advertised match you got that night on Raw, was a pay-per-view match from, say, 2 months earlier. So they didn't burn a new match on Raw. That you burn the first time these two guys wrestle on TV is going to be on a pay-per-view. And then you fill Raw with rematches. And the reason I bring it up is because on Raw, the first match of the night, we had Chris Jericho versus Sami Zayn. And I don't know about you, Joe, but I would have loved to have seen them wrestle for the first time at a pay-per-view with 15 to 20 minutes of time given than a Raw match with a commercial break and maybe only 12 minutes. How do you feel about that, Joe?
Yeah, that's actually one of my number one complaints with watching right now is because everybody gets their hands on each other before a pay-per-view match, and to me, it's just like when you want to see it the first time at the pay-per-view, not have it be the third or fourth time that they interacted. That's why, like last year, I think one of the best things they had going was the build-up of Undertaker versus Brock. How, especially the Raw with the backstage, like the whole locker room two-time pull-apart, like doing stuff like that, just like keeping guys away from each other if they do come in contact. Have it be mildly physical, or somebody just drop them, or some kind of not really the interference in the match, but the distraction finishes that they're really getting a little annoying. But like, yeah, exactly, just save it.
Like when I'm looking at, excuse me, the results for Raw right now, and I'll just run them down real quickly. We had Chris Jericho defeated Sami Zayn. We had Enzo Amore and Big Cass defeated the Dudley Boys. Baron Corbin defeated Dolph Ziggler. Cesaro and the New Day defeated The Miz and League of Nations. We had Natalya, Becky Lynch, Paige, and Sasha Banks defeat Team Bad, Summer Rae, and Charlotte, which I guess that shows that the WWE considers Sasha Banks a pure face. Apollo Crews defeated Heath Slater, and Dean Ambrose defeated Kevin Owens. Now, of that card, I would have rather have seen Chris Jericho and Sami Zayn on a pay-per-view first. I would have rather have seen Enzo and Cass versus the Dudleys on a pay-per-view first. Even Corbin and Ziggler on a pay-per-view first. Apollo Crews and Slater, sure, that could be Raw right now because Heath Slater's never going to be on a pay-per-view again. Ambrose and Owens, we've seen on a pay-per-view a few months ago, so that makes sense for it to be the main event on Raw. But Miguel, I don't know, how do you feel about those first three matches, them burning them on Raw for the first match?
I don't know why they want to give it away before they can rather do it at a special event or a pay-per-view. I'm kind of wondering maybe the office wants to kind of try stuff out, during TV time and see if the fans are interested, and if they are, they'll proceed with further booking a feud or additional matches, maybe throw a gimmick here or there down the line. But it just seems like everything is so wasted, but at the same time I feel like they're maybe just trying to get a feel for it.
Well, and especially with this new influx of NXT talent, obviously they could hold off on some of these matches to Payback, to Extreme Rules, to uh, Battleground or whatever's after, or Money in the Bank. These pay-per-views that are going to need high-profile matches. I mean, you look at the card on Payback. What makes the card on Payback right now look so hot? I mean, it's sold out right now at the Allstate Arena. The tickets on StubHub are well over face value for even the cheapest seats, and the reason for that is simply because what do we have? We have AJ Styles versus Reigns, which we've never seen before. We have Sami Zayn versus Kevin Owens, which we haven't seen a one-on-one match before in the WWE. I think that there's legitimacy to that statement of why are they burning things so quickly when you have plenty of guys on the roster if you just wanted to throw a Raw together, and I think that, especially Jericho. I mean, Jericho's not what he used to be, but Jericho versus Sami Zayn is still a match that I would love to see on a pay-per-view. I would love to see them have an extended time to tell a story, Joe.
Yeah, the only problem with that is then what are they going to do? Have Jericho just go through enhancement guys where, that he's not in need of being enhanced at all? So I guess the point, too, is they want to give, good matches that especially the IWC is going to approve of on Raw. But though they may also come back to that, that might be one of the next Jericho programs. Like for the summer, it might be SummerSlam, like a little prelude to it.
Well, I'll tell you what they could do is the kind of thing that they used to do in the past, and it's what they did on SmackDown, and that is have Jericho and Dean Ambrose versus, Jericho and Kevin Owens versus Dean Ambrose and Sami Zayn. You want to get some first-time interaction between them, well, do it in creative tag matches. And that doesn't mean that your entire Raw is filled with tag matches, but your main event could be a tag match where you expose guys, give everybody a little taste of what Sami Zayn versus Kevin Owens is going to be like, have them do 5 minutes of high spots and really sell the people on the pay-per-view. But, I mean, obviously, we're from the old school. We're from at a time where, we were craving these kinds of matches on Raw, and now it's almost ironic, Miguel, that we're almost saying, no, we don't want these matches on Raw. Save them.
Right. That way they can be enjoyed, at the right place and at the right time. I think back when we were growing up, the only confrontations we would see wouldn't be matches, maybe like a run-in or a backstage segment that turns into a scuffle and they need to get separated, but they have full-blown matches, beforehand. It just seems like they, what are they going to do to follow that up with? I mean, people always remember, like, the first and last of what they see, and if first is established like that, how is it going to continue?
And then Tuesday night we had the SmackDown tapings, and I'll tell you what, guys, for the first time in a long time, I subjected myself to a SmackDown episode, and the only reason I did is because I have the new Comcast with the X1 platform, and it does automatic DVD recordings based upon what shows that you watch. So because I watched Raw, it automatically recorded SmackDown for me. So last night, when I had nothing to do, I'm just browsing through the DVR, and there's SmackDown, so I put it on. And I got to say, the interesting thing about SmackDown is old school in a lot of respects because it's a lot more straight to the matches. It's edited, the crowd noise and everything like that. And it's what Raw is kind of leaning towards, where Raw's getting away with, what did we have? Wasn't it like 6 months ago there was a famous Raw? It was heavily criticized. It had 4 matches in 3 whole hours, or something ridiculous like that, and the fans were just complaining because it's like they were there for 3.5 hours and they saw 4 matches. But SmackDown is almost a purely in-ring show with very little storyline advancement, which is interesting to me, Joe, because when you look at the ratings of SmackDown, they're only off of Raw by about 1.3 million viewers. So more than half of your Raw audience also watches SmackDown. Why is it that even on the USA Network, the WWE continues to treat SmackDown like they don't even care about it?
Yeah, I don't know. The only thing I can think of is that, like you said, SmackDown is more of just like an exhibition show where it doesn't progress the storylines like Raw does. You know, you got your 4 Raws building up to the pay-per-view, and then maybe it's just certain people can only take in so much wrestling, you know, in their busy lives, and you know, so much other stuff to watch on TV. So it's like, you know, stick to what's more important. Then if you toss in like NXT or, you know, watching some old stuff on the network, it's like, you know, it's only so much you could tolerate.
Miguel, when was the last time you watched an episode of SmackDown?
You know, yeah,
UPN.
it was probably on UPN. It was that long ago. But you know, I can see SmackDown having the potential of being more than just a B show. I mean, it's 2 hours long, and if they were to book, you know, book SmackDown to be a continuance of Raw, I think that'd be a great way to utilize that show. And for one, it's shorter, and it has the capability of just continuing the story instead of having to go, you know, from Monday to Monday. People can see a quicker payoff, or at least a continuation of what happened that Monday.
Well, I agree with you. And actually, if you look out into the next couple months with all these main event stars coming back, you do have the ability to kind of pick and choose. I'm not going to say a split, but say if when Randy Orton comes back, he's in a storyline on SmackDown. Maybe he misses a Raw and then is on SmackDown and then comes back on the following Raw. You know, like not everybody is going to have to appear on every single show. And that could allow them to use more main event storylines on SmackDown, because right now, if you are booking your main events on every show, then you're asking your writers to come up with 8 storyline progressions between pay-per-views, and that could be difficult sometimes, Joe.
No, I absolutely agree. I was just going to say that what for me, what's lacking right now in WWE is a main eventer that you believe in, and what to me is still John Cena. And with his absence, I mean, Reigns might be the champion, but he's not the main event star that people, you know, really look up to. So what I was thinking too, how you were saying, is maybe have guys do a promo on Raw, and then, you know, have the match on SmackDown, lead them in to watch it, you know, 3 days later, get some breathing room, and like you said, yeah, maybe have focus main event guys per show without it being a split, just to get more people up, you know, different matches, and so you don't see the same guys wrestle on both shows. Just keep it, you know, a little more fresh. And then maybe too, that's how you could also get in having the bigger guys go through some enhancement guys, because you could always, you know, add a stipulation or a gimmick match or triple threat, any kind. You know, you could really shake it up, and even seeing guys, the bigger main event status guys against the undercard. At least it's a fresh matchup, and I think that's what everybody wants more than anything, especially with all these new people. It's just fresh matchups.
You brought up John Cena. Miguel, right around the time of WrestleMania, John Cena claimed in interviews that he was fully cleared. And then he had that little cameo at WrestleMania. We haven't seen him since. Then there were these speculations if there's this slight rift with the WWE over this America Grit TV show, which WWE did not allow him to promote on their television, which obviously makes sense because it went head-to-head against SmackDown. Do you think that, I should add, let me continue, that the Wrestling Observer is now reporting that Cena was originally supposed to be cleared for return in July, that may be moved up to May, but he's definitely not cleared yet. Do you think that there could be some, let's just say, smoldering embers of issues between WWE and John Cena over this American Grit television show?
Yeah, you never really know. I mean, John Cena's always been the company guy. He has been the face of the company for well over 10 years. Yes, he did take some time off to, to do one of his own projects, American Grit. And I believe WWE has also been known in history to kind of be petty with a couple of these types of instances. So, I mean, do I think that it's possible that there might be some dissension between them? Maybe some heat, sure, but ultimately, I think that they're just probably waiting for the right time to bring him out, since creatively they just need to book him in the right spot when he does come back, because you don't want to waste a great talent like Cena when he comes back.
Yeah, the American Grit thing is interesting because I'm perplexed as why the producers of American Grit put it head to head against one of the wrestling flagship shows. Because you would think that with John Cena, you would want to try and capture some of that audience, and of course, American Grit did not do as well in the ratings as they were anticipating. But when you have uh, 2.8 million people watching SmackDown, that could be in the neighborhood of, let's say, a million extra viewers that they lost putting it head to head against SmackDown. And for that reason, I also don't blame the WWE for not allowing him to promote his show on SmackDown or Raw or any WWE platform, simply because it was going head to head. But we're looking for a John Cena return. I never thought I would say that, but considering the matches that he put on last year, Joe, I cannot wait to see him wrestle the likes of AJ Styles and Sami Zayn and those guys.
Oh, absolutely. I feel the same way. Never thought I would be looking forward to Cena coming back and enjoying Cena so much. But yeah, he just proved us all wrong last year with those open challenges. Most of them were fantastic matches. Even the ones against Ziggler and Stardust, matches like that weren't so hot. I mean, it still was. I like the idea of it, and the open challenges. If he were to get the title again and bring that back up, which I don't know how they would get it off Kalisto and over to him at some point, but I think everybody would embrace that U.S. title open challenge again.
Speaking of the U.S. Championship and Kalisto, that was actually the first match on SmackDown, and I mean, it's too big for SmackDown. It's only for Raw WrestleMania, but the U.S. Championship can only be defended on Raw or at WrestleMania because this was a non-title match on SmackDown. We couldn't have a titled match on SmackDown, but it was a WrestleMania return match. It was Kalisto versus Ryback in a non-title match, which of course, obviously, as soon as they came out, I'm like, okay, Ryback's going to get his win back, and it was a match. It was nothing else. And then the next match we had, lo and behold, too big for SmackDown, another non-title match. Intercontinental Champion Miz versus AJ Styles, because it can't be a title match. And and the winner for that match was AJ Styles versus pinfall. He beat the Miz, which obviously is the reason why it was non-title. But I mean, you could have made that some kind of screw finish.
Was that a contender for the IC championship since he beat the current IC champion, you think?
Well, he has a claim to it, right? Shouldn't he? I would think so.
Yeah.
There was interference from Gallows and Anderson, I should point out.
Oh.
Okay.
They're advancing
awesome.
that storyline some more. We had Team Bad versus Paige and Natalya, and the winner of that match was Paige and Natalya, which obviously going into a pay-per-view, you want Natalya to look strong, so she obviously wasn't going to lose. You had R-Truth versus Fandango with Goldust as special referee. This turned into just comic relief. Winner R-Truth. Then you had let me read here.
Let's see.
You had a main event. The main event of the night was Chris Jericho and Kevin Owens versus Dean Ambrose and Sami Zayn. Kind of what you would expect from these guys. It was a good match. It wasn't 20 minutes, but there was nothing about this match that made me disappointed. I mean, for a tag match with these guys, it was about what I was expected, and that was SmackDown. I mean, just a solid old school feel of a show, and that also was in London. How do you guys feel about when they do overseas televised show, Miguel?
I think it's good to take the brand internationally. There's fans all over the world, and it seems to me that when they go to the UK and those other locations, those fans can be just as rowdy as a tough Philly or Chicago crowd any night. So, with that type of energy, it makes the show better.
Fun fact: I believe SummerSlam 1992 was tape delayed. I believe 3 days before it aired on pay-per-view here in the United States.
Oh.
Well, actually, it was probably two because, and this is something I don't remember. Do you guys remember growing up? Do you guys remember that SummerSlam was always on a Monday night?
No.
No, not at all.
Yeah, it did not make its appearance on a Sunday night pay-per-view slot, the traditional slot, until SummerSlam 1995. That it was always a Monday night show, and it just happened that once Raw came around, it worked out perfectly. It worked out perfectly because Raw was preempted for those 2 weeks because of the U.S. Open, but SummerSlam was always a Monday night show up until 1995, and so the SummerSlam '92 show was taped in Wembley Stadium on that Saturday, and then aired that Monday here in the States, with which obviously had the Brett versus Bulldog classic match. Joe, what do you think about international broadcasts on television and dealing with the tape delay in the modern era with spoilers?
Well, I mean, it's an option for you to come across spoilers, so I think it's a good thing they do that because those crowds are usually, like, they're more into it considering that it's a rare treat that they get a live show. They're not like us where, in Chicago we get 2 live Raws a year and then we get a pay-per-view and a house show. Those people in other countries are clamoring for the live experience, so they appreciate it more and they let it show, by having a good time.
Definitely. On Wednesday, we had the NXT show. Did either of you guys get to catch the NXT show?
The first half. Still got to finish the second.
We had the first match was the tag team champions Alpha Male defeated Enzo and Cass in a non-title match.
Mm-hmm.
No Way Jose, who's a new debut character, defeated Alexander Wolf. Nia Jax defeated Deonna Purrazzo, if I'm saying that correctly.
Yes.
And then Samoa Joe defeated Apollo Crews in the main event. Now, this is what I found interesting, and we've seen him do this before with Kevin Owens when he was the champion, but having Enzo and Cass go back to NXT and also having Apollo Crews go back to NXT. Okay, the NXT call-ups. Miguel, how do you feel about how they decide who gets called up, and how do you feel also when they have them return to NXT almost like they're part-time on both rosters?
When you do call up people from NXT, it seems like when it's time they take them on the Raw, but they're not a permanent Raw fixture quite yet. They still have to kind of finish up some loose ends at NXT, maybe do the job for a couple people that are still currently there to kind of elevate them. It seems like it's kind of been part of the business. I mean, we've seen some talent kind of segue from NXT to Raw, but then still do a little bit of NXT until they stay at Raw. So I think that they're just their Raw dues by taking to NXT and then back to the main roster, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think that it's a way for the WWE. I think they feel it's a way to get their NXT a little bit more promotion. Maybe somebody who saw Enzo and Cass on Raw and then finds out that the wrestling at NXT might try it out or whatever. I don't know. I guess I just find it. There's so many people down in developmental. I just kind of feel like if a guy goes, a guy should go. I mean, obviously, there's if there's tapings in the can that has the guy on it or the girl on it, I understand. But Enzo and Cass were on Raw right after WrestleMania, and they still taped these shows with them on it. But I mean, I guess it's not that big of a deal since it's all one universe, right? It's all a WWE. So
Pretty much, yeah.
that was the NXT results. A little interesting piece of news here. Did you guys hear that a former world champion in WWE may be done with the company as recently as right now, today?
I actually heard something in regards to that from my wife yesterday, and I don't want to reveal that identity in case Joe hasn't heard of it yet.
Have you heard, Joe?
Yeah, I read about it, and I read a little more into it, and it's kind of hard to say if the tweet was pretty vague. So
it was, but if you do remember, you brought it up last week on a show. There was that report a few months ago, I believe, from Meltzer that said that a pretty big name was going to gave his notice along with Wade Barrett, and obviously Jack Swagger now is not a big name, but he would have been at one point. But if it is indeed Jack Swagger, and if he's leaving with TNA basically just bankrupt and not even an option because they're not even signing anybody right now because they have no money. Joe, do you see a future for him in pro wrestling, at least in the mainstream, with any other promotion, considering that his style is not what lights the ring on fire in the indies?
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't see him going to New Japan or Ring of Honor, but I could see him. That is what I would be able to picture the guy going to would be the Independents, because he's a WWE name, former champion. He's a pretty big dude, so even if they hired him to make somebody else look good, he'll have work. And from what I heard from certain independent guys on podcasts, if you go out and you hustle and you get the right deals, you have the option of almost making what the bottom pay grade guys in WWE make just by being out on independence and selling your own T-shirts and autographs and taking pictures for the extra income. So there's work out there, and that the guy's stuck there. He's never going to have anything better than what the situation he has there. Not that I don't think he's deserving of anything more, but maybe it's just time for him to move on.
Miguel, last week we had talked about the influx of new talent and how this is going to create a lot of new opportunities for NXT call-ups, but also it's going to seal the fate of some on the roster when they return from this European trip. Is Jack Swagger just the tip of the iceberg before we see a purge?
I mean, I think that there's probably some guys that'll probably get their notice sometime soon, and you were naming off some names from SmackDown, and I wasn't sure that these guys were still around. Guys like Fandango, perhaps they haven't used too much, and he had a pretty strong start, and everything just kind of fizzled away. But there's only so many spots, and with this influx of talent coming into the main roster, I mean, they only have so many seats in catering. You know what I mean?
Right. I expect to see a purge. Obviously, one person that's most likely going to be on that list is Mr. Adam Rose. Obviously, we brought him up last week, Joe, and we discussed a little bit about the wellness policy and our feelings of it. But touching back on that, Joe, what about Adam Rose's statement that he was taking a prescribed medication and that his doctor is outraged that he got suspended for that, and his doctor is going to be at some point providing a statement?
Oh yeah, I think that's complete BS if that's the truth, and if WWE, I don't know how the circumstances were with the drug testing, but if something comes up and positive in a drug test, oh, well, I was just saying, something were to come up in
Hold on, I'm gonna mute Miguel for a second here while he
Oh,
figures
okay.
out his situation. I'll come back to you, Miguel, in a minute. Go ahead.
Okay. No, definitely BS if a guy takes a drug test and a prescription drug comes up and you're not given the benefit of proving you're prescribed to it by a doctor and then you're being penalized for it. I think that's complete horseshit.
Well, and it goes back to what we were discussing last week. After this Adam Rose situation, even if he ends up that it's guilty and he's just trying to save face, it's the kind of thing that I just want the wellness policy to go away or to be something where maybe it's the only thing that the WWE allows to be collectively bargained or what have you, because I just don't like it. I don't like the fact that he doesn't even have any rights other than to sue, whereas in all the other sports there's arbitration that they could go to that's paid for by the union, that they don't even have to come out of their pocket most likely in most circumstances. So I don't like it because it gives pro wrestlers really no say in the formulation of the wellness policy, and the company could unilaterally, arbitrarily just impose it on these people that are supposed to be independent contractors, and on top of it all, take away their livelihood for things that, in most situations, I mean, Miguel, Joe, the situation with Connor, he was suspended 10 years ago, and they're considering it a second violation for something 10 years ago. That you could have a clean credit report after 10 years after filing bankruptcy.
Yeah, that's really something. I guess they have that decade clause in the contract where you get one violation per decade.
I mean, I guess. I mean, I understand the second offense, but usually there's got to be some kind of statute of limitations on that.
Yeah, that's something else. I've never heard of anything like that in any company in my life.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate because he in his post he even said that him coming forth with this information is tantamount to career suicide, and maybe a guy 35 kind of sees the landscape and realizes that his time in the WWE was, maybe it wasn't going to come to an end if he didn't get suspended, but he was going to be like the rest of social outcasts. I mean, the only one that has any chance of breakout potential is Bo Dallas, and really that's only because, they could always break glass and pull the alarm and put him in with the Wyatt family if they wanted to. But I mean, Heath Slater and Adam Rose to me are, there's no upward movement. Let's put it that way. So, Miguel, I'm not sure exactly how much
Agreed.
but about the conversation of Adam Rose. But how do you feel about him being suspended?
Oh, looks like we got a live one here.
How do you feel about him being suspended when he says that he has a prescription and that his doctor's outraged that they would suspend him for that violation?
Well, I believe something similar happened with Rey Mysterio Jr. when he was still with WWE. He violated the wellness program, but it was due to supplements or medication that he was taking, and it wasn't anything illicit drug or anything like that. So that's definitely within the realm of possibility, and I feel for the guy because he was actually starting to work something out with this social outcasts gimmick with all these other mid-card guys that could really use a push because they could work, they just don't have anything for them creatively, and to kind of just take them out of the picture for the next 2 months, that's right next to career Homicide, if you ever seen it.
And how do you feel about the wellness policy in general? Me and Joe went
Yeah, no, that's definitely not right.
discussion about it last week, and the fact that the wrestlers have no say in the formulation of the banned substances, the punishments, the discipline, and really have no recourse as in other professional sports, where even a UFC fighter can appeal to the state athletic commission.
Right. I think the regulation of it, it's not in the best interest of the wrestler, of the worker, or anything like that. And I think that's yet just another thing that company uses to kind of hold over account in case they need to you know get rid of that or do something. Yeah, I don't agree with it, and I think it's not clearly defined like other professional sports, and yeah, should probably find a better way to regulate it.
Now, switching topics here, we have a situation where, can you hear me, Miguel? Joe's saying message that he can't hear me.
Oh, I could hear you just fine.
Wait, hold on, let's.
Hey, Miguel, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. I can hear you fine. I can't hear Tim at all.
Oh, were you able to hear him say, if he could hear me or something along those lines?
No, no, I can only hear you.
Maybe maybe you muted him. I don't know.
I hope that I'm still being broadcast.
Oh, I still have the live sticker on my display. So.
Now I hear Tim. Okay.
Okay.
I don't know what's going on.
All right.
Full issue.
All right. Well, we can get back on topic. I was going to bring up the fact that I have not heard any update as of this recording, but we don't talk about it much because there's no point. But TNA appears to be really on death's door right now. How do you guys feel about that, Joe? And were you ever a fan of TNA at any point in its 14-year run?
I can't say I was a fan, but I did watch it a few times. The only time I really showed any interest in it, and I went to see them live once, was because they got Hogan back, and that was the draw for me. But the few times I did watch it, what I could absolutely say was that the matches were usually almost everybody on the card. The matches were awesome. I wasn't a fan of the storylines, or I didn't really know what the storylines were going in because I, just jumped in when they hired the legends. But match quality was always good. The live show we went to, very fun. The production was actually decent. This was, I would say, 2013, I believe we went.
That was
And,
I was there too. That was during the Aces and Eights angle. That was the hottest
yes.
that they ever had.
Yeah, no, but it was a good wrestling show. I don't see what everyone, all the negativity about it was at that point. I just thought, for me, all I wanted to see was good wrestling, and I wanted to hear Hogan come out and cut promos live, and I think I was pretty satisfied leaving that show. Sting was in the main event. I think AJ was injured at the time. But yeah, it was all right, and I'm not going to jump on the bandwagon of hating on TNA and wanting them to go out of business because I think that's terrible. There's guys there that the WWE will probably pick up, and that's just another company for guys to get exposure, to get noticed by WWE. So losing them, it is not good for the wrestling world at all. Not to mention those guys, need a job.
Well, and every wrestling promotion always has a legacy and always has a history and a place in this industry. I watched TNA towards the beginning when they were still doing the weekly pay-per-views as the only show, and I remember being fascinated by the Amazing Red in the X Division, watching Christopher Daniels, AJ Styles, when they were all obviously 14 years younger. And I was quite impressed. It was actually the reason why I went and I got a black box for my cable system back in the day. And when they went to Fox Sports, I believe, or Fox Sports Network, or whatever the affiliation was, and then they went to the six-sided ring. I don't know. I lost a lot of interest in it, but it obviously shows that mismanagement in pro wrestling has always been the downfall. Whether it was Crockett Promotions, WCW, TNA, mismanagement is always the downfall. And Miguel, that really shows why the WWE has been the one to stand tall for the last 50 years.
No, absolutely. You also left ECW out of that illustrious list of former wrestling companies, but definitely, I mean, if you can have the best, the best creative, best angles, best workers, but ultimately you need to run it like a business, and it needs to be successful and actually turn a profit. And it seems like TNA has Dixie and other investors have just been pumping money into it countless year after year, and it just seems like it might be at an end. They might be at the end of their rope, and it's unfortunate because if they do close their doors, there's a good amount of people that aren't going to be able to find work after that.
I don't know how much money Dixie Carter is expecting to get investors to pump in, considering that she still wants 51% of control of the company. But
Right.
Joe, considering the history that they had in this industry, and at one point they were drawing over 2 million people on Spike TV. Do you think the WWE should think about investing at that 49% level so that way they could get first dibs on purchasing all of the intellectual property once it eventually goes under?
No, absolutely. There's so many Hall of Famers that have walked through the doors of TNA that like you could have fresh footage that most WWE fans have never seen and add that to the network. I think that would be a huge enticing factor to order the network. For me, that's going to give me a reason to log in an extra few times a month because there's a lot of matches in TNA that I've never seen and I'd like to go back and check out. And yeah, I mean Ric Flair, Kevin Nash, Hogan, Dudley Boy, Sting, AJ Styles. I mean, come on, that's a no-brainer. They could spare it.
And Miguel, on Monday nights you have an audience of in the neighborhood of 3 to 4 million people that want to watch wrestling, that tune in to watch Raw. If you're Pop TV right now and TNA is only drawing on a good week 200,000 people plus, how would you feel if they just put it on Monday nights head to head with Raw, not to compete or think that you're going to outdraw Raw, but maybe you could turn that 200,000 viewers into 500,000 viewers because maybe somebody just clicks over like we used to back there in the Nitro days when there was a lame segment on Raw.
Yeah, that's a very good point. But I have a question, and maybe you could answer it. Didn't TNA or Impact Wrestling try that before when Hogan and Bischoff?
Yeah, but I think what
It was
happened.
only a couple weeks.
Yeah, I don't know if I know the facts 100%, but it was, I believe, January of 2010.
Yes.
And the WWE responded by bringing back Bret Hart.
Yes.
And I think the problem with that was they thought that they would be able to increase their. So basically, what I'm saying is, Pop TV, their ratings are basically insignificant right now.
Right.
And
Right.
you could maybe just expose some people to your product. When they did that before, they had high ratings, decent ratings on Spike in the millions. And when they went head to head against Raw, they lost viewers. So therefore, they were comparing high ratings with going head to head. My thought process is you have 0 ratings right now. Put it on Wrestling Night, and so that way people who are just don't want to see Roman Reigns give a promo could just turn the channel.
Yeah, put that way, I wouldn't mind having that as an alternative for sure.
I mean, I would definitely at least know when it was on, and I would figure out where Pop TV is. And especially because with my new Comcast Xfinity X1 remote, I just have to say Pop TV into the remote, and it'll automatically change the channel to me. Cheap plug. But
Proud sponsor.
I love that, by the way. I don't. Do you guys have the X1 remote with Comcast with the voice input?
Do not. It sounds really convenient though.
Oh, it's Side note, we could talk about anything on here, but it's great. You just press it, you talk into it. You could name a show. It'll search its on-demand library, all the channel guide, all the future shows. You could just speak a channel either by number or by the channel name, and it'll automatically tune into that channel. It's great because you never have to fiddle around with a guide ever again. But on a side note, but it's unfortunate watching this happen to TNA and Dixie Carter to really just be so stubborn as to want to maintain control. I've heard from Meltzer has reported that it's her unwillingness to give up control of the company, even when there's investors ready to buy, has something to do with her family dynamic of this has been her only success in life compared to her parents and her siblings. And so for her to give up on this would be her being a complete utter failure in her family, which apparently is why she's holding on to it. But I mean, who in their right mind, for a company that has lost all this money forever and has just seen stars like Austin Aries and Bobby Roode and Kurt Angle walk out the door, who in their right mind would put $1 into this company if she's still calling the shots, Joe?
Ooh, Mark, I think Mark Cuban. Did you say?
No.
Oh, okay. No, yeah, no, absolutely right. You know what? I guess it's her. That's definitely coming down to her ego. If you're going to go down with the ship and you're the captain with an ego, then that's the scenario TNA's in with Dixie.
I mean, to go so far as Meltzer reporting that they got so far behind on their bills for their offices that they've had to move their offices into their warehouse that stores all their equipment and merchandise. I mean, to me, the company's basically homeless. I mean, the equivalent to a person being a homeless person. Like, they have no money, according to Meltzer, none whatsoever. And that to do these most recent TV tapings this week, that if they did not get an influx of cash from an investor, there would have been no TV tapings, period, because they didn't even have the money to fly the talent to the TV tapings. I mean, that's a level of not having money where I think it's the equivalent of, I don't know, would you say, Miguel, it's the equivalent of a person taking on payday loans at a payday loan store, where you're just getting by, but you're not going to make any progress that way.
I'd say going to those payday loan places is rock bottom. Maybe right now we could compare them to going to the pawn store and taking in some of their merchandise to get a loan so they could get by one taping, and then once an investor comes in, they could probably recover some of that money. But yeah, it seems like it's really they're definitely tightening their belts and probably just hoping for the next big payoff, but that may be far in between, like as of the way things are going right now.
We talked about China earlier. According to reports, the founder of Vivid Video, the adult movie site, says that China had contacted him as recently as last week about doing some kind of follow-up video to her previous titles. Whether or not that was going to include Sunny, who knows? But I don't know. Do you think, Joe, that would have been the right move for her were she to still be alive? Or obviously, she was already persona non grata with the WWE, and that she wasn't looking at it as an obstacle to being in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't even, offer an opinion on that because that would be a personal matter on her part. But I don't think that would help draw any kind of relations back with WWE. That's all I could really say.
Yeah. All right. Well, that concludes most of the news items. Is there any news items that you guys have seen or read that I did not bring up that you would like to touch on?
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't mind chatting a little bit about the upcoming Cruiserweight tournament that's going to be in during the summer exclusively on the network.
Right, and when you say exclusively on a network, that piques my interest because I haven't read too much about the Cruiserweight tournament, only broad discussions about it. But so does this mean that the WWE Network is going to be airing on their network matches that take place in other promotions?
No, I guess what it's going to be, it's going to be guys from other promotions are all going to congregate in, I guess, the house of WWE, wherever they're going to film it at, and they're all going to, I don't know if they're so much going to represent the companies they work for or the countries they come from, because it's called the Global Cruiserweight Series, so it's got people coming from all over, but it's definitely something different. You never seen them do anything like that, and according to this, it's going to start on July 13th.
Miguel, do you feel like this is legitimately just trying to find the best cruiserweight in the world and maybe relaunch a cruiserweight title, or is this the WWE's way of just talent scouting the globe?
I think WWE's trying to see what else is out there because they've in the past couple of years they've grabbed plenty of international talent and have them secured as NXT or WWE superstars now. I mean, we're talking about Finn Balor, Kevin Owens, Hideo Itami, Shinsuke Nakamura, Asuka. If I'm leaving anyone out, feel free to throw them right in. But it's I think they're just trying to build their brand even more for their next wave of talent to just keep everything moving along. And this is the best way to start it as a tournament for cruiserweights, and there's a lot of benefit in that for sure.
Now, discussing the WWE going in a different route, and we talked about them bringing up more NXT talents. Let me paint the scenario, and do you think that it's realistic? But let's say somebody with money comes in to purchase TNA simply because TNA still has TV contracts, which is something that like Global Force Wrestling and Ring of Honor, they struggle to obtain. They also have international TV contracts. Let's say somebody comes in with money, and we talked about the NXT influx of talent, and there's going to be a purge of the WWE roster most likely. And not to say that Wade Barrett or Jack Swagger are big names on their own, but Wade Barrett, Jack Swagger, Adam Rose, maybe a Dolph Ziggler, and maybe somebody with money running a promotion brings in a Daniel Bryan or a CM Punk into the situation, kind of rehashing the way WCW went from being an afterthought to being a big-time player. Could you see a scenario, or do you feel it's realistic for something like that to play out?
Who's that directed towards?
Yeah, either one. You go first, Miguel.
Oh, okay. I think the whole wrestling scene has changed dramatically since like the 90s when WCW pretty much reinvented talent such as Hogan and Macho Man and Flair to go into the new generation. If there was another person trying to get talent like that and kind of reintroduce them, I really feel that most of those types of people may not be on board or may have not have the physical capabilities to even continue on to a new like a new scene. But you can never say never, because Rey Mysterio is in Lucha Underground, and he's been doing pretty well with that from what I've seen.
Yeah, no. Getting back to the Cruiserweight tournament, Joe, your interest level on the Cruiserweight tournament on a scale of 1 to 10?
Oh, for me, with 10 being extremely enthused, would be a 10. I just want to see good matches, fast-paced matches by guys that I'm not familiar with, mixed with a couple of guys that I am familiar with. And I just think that's awesome to do something like that. And it seems like this is being, I don't know if it's completely spearheaded by Triple H, but it's got Triple H's touch all over it, and he's doing all the press for the Cruiserweight series. So I'm a huge fan of everything Triple H has done with NXT, so that also makes me more interested in this. It seems like he's the one that's looking to the future, and trying to do stuff like this, that where it is catering to the independent wrestling community, but not. I hate even saying that. I think it's catering more towards people who appreciate good in-ring work and not even caring about storylines or anything. Just want to see some good matches.
Now, do you think that we will see any WWE stars in this Cruiserweight tournament? Somebody like a Kalisto, or maybe if he wasn't injured, obviously, would we have seen somebody like Neville in there? Have you heard about that?
I haven't heard anything about that aside from a couple of guys that are on NXT. But I think that ultimately would hurt any of their guys losing in that tournament, and then coming back to the WWE shows with the loss, being unsuccessful in an outside project. I don't know, but maybe you could put somebody in there like the NXT guys that aren't established yet, and then give them some legs by having something else under their belt, going at it with some of these guys who are considered best in their countries that they're pulling over. They got guys coming from England, China, Japan, Israel. Pretty interesting.
Yeah, I guess you could have guys from developmental, as in the training center, who have not been on TV like Braun Strowman was before he debuted in the tournament, as opposed to somebody who actually appears on TV at Full Sail. But it should be interesting. Now, Miguel, how do you think that it's going to go down with the talent in the Cruiserweights? Because obviously you're having guys come from independent promotions here around. How do you book that, and how do you tell a guy you're going to go over, or this guy's going to go over for a certain reason? Like, to me, that would be the most difficult part of this tournament, is how the heck do you book who wins and loses?
I think that when you have an idea that you're coming into someone else's house, that you're going to have to kind of abide by their rules if you do want to take part in it. So they may say, take off your shoes, and if you want to come in that house, you take off your shoes. So I think to be part of this tournament, these international talent have to know that there's going to be one, only one that's going to be on top, and ultimately that's going to fall behind the booking decisions of either Triple H or someone in NXT booking. And you can't have you got to check your ego in at the door, because these guys are definitely going to get a whole lot of exposure, and that's good for their own business as well as the NXT business as well.
Mm-hmm. It should be interesting how the Cruiserweight tournament plays out in the next coming weeks and months. Now, moving on to one of our staples of the week would be our random wrestler of the week, and our thoughts and ideas and memories of this wrestler. So I will throw out a wrestler, and I will give my first impressions, since you guys have not heard who I'm going to throw out here, so you could think a little bit. But this week's random wrestler of the week is going to be Rick the Model Martel. And
awesome.
My memories of Rick the Model Martel are always, first and foremost, him walking away from Tito Santana at WrestleMania 5 and Strikeforce splitting up. And it's one of those that's also a topic for another show, and that would be like feuds that never had the big blow-off, because they never wrestled each other at a pay-per-view after that, which obviously, for at the time, such a controversial heel move for Martel to just turn on the beloved Tito Santana. But obviously, Rick Martel's time in the WWE was, for the most part, no higher than the mid-card level. A lot of times lower level on the card. He opened WrestleMania 6 with Coco Beware. He had a well-known feud and match with Jake the Snake Roberts at WrestleMania 7 in a blindfold match, and then finished his WrestleMania career at WrestleMania 8 versus Tatanka, the undefeated Tatanka. Excuse me. But Joe, what are your thoughts and memories and opinions of Rick the Model Martel?
I loved Rick Martel. One of my absolute favorite gimmicky characters from the early '90s, being the Model. Strike Force, I wasn't too big on. They're good tag team and all, but I really appreciated Martel as a heel solo. I thought his, especially with the heavy, super heavy French Canadian accent he had when he would do a promo, his heel promos were just awesome. Great in Survivor Series matches, and just being one, not really a comedy guy for its time, but just a '90s gimmick guy. I love the Boston Crab as a finisher, always have, and one of my favorite things about him was the button he would wear saying "Yes, I am a model," the big oversized '90s button, and of course, the classic match, the blindfold arrogance match against Jake the Snake was awesome. I don't think you would ever be able to do something like that nowadays, being blindfolded in the ring.
No,
Martel's the man. Hope to meet him one day.
Miguel, your memories of Rick the Model Martel, and how about one guy that Rick Martel reminds you of today? I'm going to throw one out. I feel like The Miz and Rick Martel share a lot of similar qualities in just simply that just the sight of them, their appearance, makes the fans want to vomit. And I mean that in a good way because they're playing heels.
No, definitely. The Miz is a good comparison to how Rick Martel was, or as his predecessor. My fondest memories of Rick Martel was, during his time as the Model. He very arrogant. He would spray his opponents with arrogance, which was coming out of that what was it, like an industrial farming tool. It was so over the top. It's hilarious.
Oh, the atomizer. I think they referred to it as an atomizer. I think.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that was really something. One of my other memories of him that wasn't mentioned was I think they were having an Intercontinental Championship tournament, or maybe it was a Battle Royale, and it was him and Razor Ramon that were the last two guys. And if my memory serves correctly, it was Razor that ended up going over to become the first Intercontinental Championship reign, and I thought that was a real good way to kind of introduce the new generation of wrestler by pairing him with good old Rick Martel, who's been a solid worker, good mechanic in the ring, ever since he started with the company.
Yeah, that was I believe October of 1993. That was a battle royal to decide the number one and number two contenders for the vacant Intercontinental Championship that was vacated by a suspended Shawn Michaels.
Okay.
Somehow throughout his career, even going back to AWA, he had an amazing ability to never actually job. I believe Shawn Michaels jobbed a title for the first time in his career at WrestleMania 14 against Steve Austin. I don't believe he ever lost the title prior to that.
I think I can have something before then, if you'll allow.
Sure.
Marty Jannetty pops out from the crowd in Monday Night Raw, and by a small package, after some interference from Mr. Perfect throwing that hand towel right at his face. Marty Jannetty pins him 1-2-3 in what was one of the best Intercontinental Championship matches of the year. I don't have the year, but it was early Raw.
That was June of 1993 because it was right before the King of the Ring that year, which was June of that year.
Okay. So I'm pretty sure he probably wasn't too happy about having the job then, but honestly, those are the only two championship losses that I can remember from him.
Yeah, and then that October 1993 Battle Royal was also the last appearance of Giant Gonzalez in the WWE. He was in that Battle Royal, and the last two participants, like you said, were Rick Martel and Razor Ramon, and then they fought the next week on Raw with Razor defeating Martel for his first Intercontinental title, which then, of course, led up through storyline to the WrestleMania 10 first ever ladder match. So just absolute great time period for Razor Ramon, and I believe that also might have been Rick Martel's last appearance. Because I'm trying to remember if he appeared at Royal Rumble '94. I know he was gone by the summer of '94, but he may have appeared at Royal Rumble '94. But he was done with the company shortly thereafter. So, especially back then, I wouldn't have been surprised if he did the honors on his way out of the company by putting Razor over.
Right. As a matter of fact, I think he retired that year. He didn't go on to anywhere else, and he never went back to wrestling since.
He did come back to wrestling. He was at Royal Rumble '95, and then I believe for a very, very brief time was in WCW, like for a blip on Nitro. But I don't it wasn't like. I don't think he was brought in as an NWO member or whatever. I believe he came in as Rick Martel. I could have that wrong, but I definitely know he was at Royal Rumble 1995.
Yeah, I had read online that he's one of them guys that he kind of purged wrestling out of his life, and he goes back once a year to the NWA reunion shows for autograph sessions and pictures and everything. But other than that, I mean, he never got a job, as an agent or a producer. I mean, he moved on completely. He's one of the rare guys that wind up doing that had any success, in the ring.
And I believe I've heard that I think he's a real estate agent in Montreal or somewhere in the province of Quebec, but I'm not positive of that. But yeah, Rick the Model Martel, unfortunately not a lot of classic matches. Even though he had a lot of pay-per-view appearances, most of them were early on in the card or in Survivor Series matches or just appearances in the Royal Rumble. So not too much to write home about him as far as great matches, though. But
well, what you could separate from that statement, compare that to a modern guy like Roman Reigns. What did Rick Martel have? Charisma, character, and the opposite kind of heat.
Yeah. Moving on to another weekly topic, and that is the worst thing in wrestling this week. I am going to go with I don't like the build-up between Roman Reigns and AJ Styles. I think that either way that it goes, whether it's the creation of the Roman Empire or the reformation of the Bullet Club, it's like they're still just pandering to the audience using AJ to try and put more heat over on Reigns. And, I mean, obviously there's been podcasts over and over again over last year from everybody about how they don't understand why they keep getting behind Reigns, but I just wanted AJ Styles to be a white meat babyface. That's all I want him to be. I don't want them trying to muddy it all up like, are these guys attacking Reigns, and doing these dastardly things for AJ? And even if that leads to AJ going heel, I'm not a fan of that, at least not at this point in his WWE career. I mean, for him to go heel so fast, to the casual WWE fan that doesn't know much about him, I think would be a little bit disruptive to his acceptance by WWE television. And, of course, me, I mean, I just can't stand Roman Reigns' gimmick. I can't stand the storyline. I don't care if he was number 3 in merchandise last year, according to Meltzer in 2015. But, I don't know. That's my worst of the week, and that's just the storyline build-up between those two for the main event. What about you, Joe? What's your worst thing of the week?
Yeah, I don't really have anything this week. Nothing really pissed me off to the point of not seeing a future down the line. But I'll just have to say the passing of China was the bummer of the week.
Yeah.
Anytime there's a death of a wrestler, it sucks. But especially one that who never got final closure with the company.
What about you, Miguel? You got a worst thing in the week?
For me, the worst thing of the week, yes, China's passing was up there, but yet another show involving other twins has been announced. So we've got our Total Divas. Now that we have it as called Total Bellas, and that's definitely some pretty bad news for myself. I believe I'm not a big fan of that series.
Well, I'll tell you what, that news actually, to be quite honest, it actually makes me think about where we are in television in this day and age, because with Total Divas ratings cratering as the season went on, it really just shows how powerful even the WWE is with their little ratings. Because I believe Meltzer stated that if USA didn't have Raw and SmackDown's ratings for the first quarter of the year, they would have dropped from like number 3 network to like the number 13th network, which is a big discrepancy then in how much you could charge for advertising for your average program. And so as much as a fan, I'm concerned, like, well, where's the WWE going to be at in 3 years when their contract is up? Because you could see a very different landscape if their royalties or rights fees fall through the floor. But it also makes me realize that obviously no networks are doing well and no TV shows are doing well. If they're spinning off Total Bellas, now they might be looking at it as, because apparently, according to the press release I read, it's going to include John Cena and Daniel Bryan. So it theoretically could have more star power than Total Divas does.
And you forgot to mention the other new character going to be introduced on the show.
Well, right, John Laurinaitis, Johnny Ace.
Yeah, Johnny Ace. I think that's going to be hilarious. And can you imagine if they have Animal come in on some episodes?
Right.
I'd like Johnny Ace come in on a skateboard, first appearance in the show. That'd be great.
Oh, that would. Hey, how are you doing? He just falls over. That would be.
Yeah.
Joe, do you have any, you want to give us another one of your meet and greet stories from the past?
Yeah, sure. Let's see. Okay, yeah, this was a good one. This one includes Miguel, so maybe we could just do a double whammy on this one. It was at it was either Wizard Con in Chicago or it was C2E2. I don't remember which one, but we went and we met the Blue World Order, Nova, Stevie Richards, and Blue Meanie. And out of our group, a few of us were dressed up as wrestlers. I was dressed up as Ric Flair. Our friend Jason was dressed up as Stone Cold Steve Austin. And Brad was dressed up as like the early 2000s era Triple H with the leather jacket and the jean jacket over the leather jacket. So we go up to meet the guys, and they were right next to Davey Boy Smith's son, David Hart Smith. They're at their booth. So we go up to them, and the table was kind of empty at the time, and we walked up to them, and they popped seeing us dressed in our costumes. They loved it, and they took pictures of us. Stevie Richards said he texted a picture to Triple H of us, and we had a nice conversation with them about ECW. Real friendly, and Stevie Richards especially was really outgoing and friendly dude. That was awesome, and Miguel's got another funny part, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, it was really great meeting the guys. They're very very friendly, very easily to approach. I do believe when we went for that photo op, we met we had to do one of the poses. Our friend Brad, he had a prop mallet, not a mallet, I'm sorry, a sledgehammer.
Sledgehammer.
And Stevie went ahead and took it, and started just working with it. But we noticed that in the photo that we took with him, he just had the most insane reach with that. He has just the longest arms, and we could tweet that later on just so you could see it. But I refer, since that picture, I've referred to him as Stevie Reed Richards, because his reach was so strong. He was just like Mr. Fantastic with his long arms in that photo. It's really quite a.
Yeah, he could almost hug the three of us, and we're big dudes with one arm. I mean, it's just a hilarious picture.
Wow.
Yeah, actually, I wasn't dressed as any wrestlers at the time, but I was wearing a yellow T-shirt with Boss Man and Joe, what's his name?
Hakeem.
Thank you. I was going to say Haku, and I knew I was wrong. The Twin Towers, and it was great because it was a picture of both of them, and then right underneath, never forget, and never forget the Twin Towers. It was a kind of a play on not such a good day in American history, but pretty funny shirt nonetheless.
Hilarious.
And the guys definitely popped with that shirt. David Hart Smith, he got a kick out of that too. But yeah. Am I leaving anything out?
No, that was it for our meet and greet with them. Yeah, they were super approachable. I think you bought a BWO T-shirt from them.
Yeah, they were selling BWO T-shirts. They took the time to personalize it. All three of them signed it. It was just really really cool stand-up guys. And I think we met Ted DiBiase afterwards and encountered Virgil.
Ooh, that's a story for another time.
But yeah, keep your money close if you're by Virgil. That's all I got to say.
Which is funny because did you see? I believe it was the most recent episode of Edge and Christian.
Yes, that was awesome.
He was in the warehouse, right?
Yeah,
the warehouse, and he was trying to steal memorabilia out of the warehouse.
Oh yeah, they should have had him with Jake the Snake, and Brutus the Barber Beefcake's Shears. They should have had him taking all the '90s gimmicks and walking away with them. That would have been great.
He'd be the real life people, man.
It was speaking of Edge and Christian's show. I checked out 2 more episodes after we discussed it last week on the show, Joe. And I got to say, they got something there. I think the show's going to improve. I think
each episode gets better.
Yeah, the episodes are improving. First of all, I never thought I was going to see Sean Mooney ever again on a WWE show of any kind. I don't know if he's ever appeared at an old school Raw or whatever, but seeing him and Gene Okerlund on there was just fabulous.
Awesome.
If they ever do another old school Raw, I would love for them to have them do the backstage interviews. And but I think their show is hitting its stride because they sprinkle in so much references to the old. But it's sprinkled in, and they could still do modern stuff with modern wrestlers. But I think the Edge and Christian show, it seems like it's almost geared to people more like us because the references are references that people under the age of 30 are probably not going to get.
Yeah, it's also, there's a lot of inside stuff for people that read everything online, so it's definitely geared towards the 30-year-old plus wrestling fan, anybody that grew up in the Attitude Era for sure. And what I like about it is that how you said they do touch about all the eras. I mean, there's a lot of stuff for the 80s era, but they're not going past that. They're not going into Bruno Sammartino and Gorgeous George, but and then when they throw in the pop culture references, that's all pretty relevant to the average viewer. So it's like they just got a good flow of everything, and I like that the bit they do where they interrogate a wrestler that they've done in 3 different episodes at least now. I think that's a good funny running gag.
Yeah, see them interrogate Beefcake, I thought was hilarious because
Mhm.
I thought Beefcake was like what you talked about Martel. I thought he was one of those guys that was just kind of like done.
No, he's still at all the conventions, and we met him at a flea market before, and
Yeah,
he's still around.
he had some interesting stories, and even put our friend Brad in the sleeper hold, and he let us take a picture of it. So that was fun.
Well, that's amazing. Well, guys, I appreciate you joining us. We're going to wrap up this show. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Don't forget to join us on ObsessiveWrestling.com for articles and information, on our Twitter at OWW Podcast, and don't forget to join us every week on Sunday morning here on the Obsessive Wrestling Podcast. See you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.
Later.